We have okay, now we're starting. So I would like to call the meeting to order. And I guess if I open up the agenda, I see the public comment is the first. Is there anyone, or maybe Jacqueline, you could tell us, is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? Have something to say?
Yep, no public no one from the public is on, so you're good.
Okay. The second item is approval of the minutes on September 19th. I reviewed them, I didn't see, well, I wasn't there, so I can't say that I had an opinion one way or the other, but they look complete. Are there any additions or edits required for the minutes of the meeting of September 19th? Nope. Then can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Almost approved.
Eileen said yes. Joe, do you second then?
A second.
Okay. Any objections? Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved. Okay, with that piece of paper aside. Mark, the next item is to review and discuss the project management agreement. I had a couple of questions here and there. I think Joe and maybe some of the others will have questions, but before we get to the management agreement, maybe you started just briefly on before everyone was on that you maybe are the contact, at least for the first part of the project. And if you'd like to give us a little rundown of what your role is going to be and what
Sure.
Adam's role is going to be, and if he's going to come in, and if there's anyone else involved, let us know.
Sure. First, thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for the selection of Colliers for this assignment. We're extremely thrilled to continue on in this journey with the Academy School. As I mentioned in the interview, it's been several years since Al and Bill and I started this discussion with what to do with the building. So I'm just thrilled that we can continue and seeing it through to its rightful use as a community center. So as I mentioned, I was involved with this project in this building for the last several years. So I know the building very well. I know the program, I know the budget, I know the hazmat reports that you issued as part of the package. I worked with Kathleen to pull that information together. And my colleague, Adam Levitas, who is our project manager, is finishing up a school project in Mansfield, and he'll be coming off of that in the next month or so. So my familiarity with the project, my familiarity with the building and the program, my desire to stay close to this project is what's leading me to be here to transition from interview candidate to project management firm. Adam and I and Judy Denny, who you met at the interview, we've already been working on pulling stuff together. We've got a draft RFQ for architect services. We're starting to work on schedules. So you'll see the three of us, but you'll see me more heavily for the first, let's say, through 2022. But I'll also be involved only because I'm just so intimately aware and knowledgeable of the building and the program and the budget and everything else that goes with it. So yeah, so that's again, I'm a managing director. I work out of the Madison office and on New Road. I'm oftentimes traveling by the building to get lunch or do whatever, for when I'm out and about. So yeah, so that's a bit about me and what we'll be doing. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about what we're going to be doing or what I'm going to be doing to start. Or we can talk about the agreement. Again, I don't get, if there are questions about the legal questions about the agreement, which by the way, came from the agreement we used for the schools project. So I just tried to marry. So if there were any negotiations between the town and the firm, I just assumed that would carry over through this project. So I started with that agreement and just changed some of the business terms. But happy to answer any questions that anybody has about the agreement or anything else that we're going to be doing.
So, Mark, just to be clear, so we're going to be dealing with you primarily through the end of 2022, and then at some point there will be a transition to bring the other folks in.
No, what'll happen, AJ, is probably the next meeting or the following meeting, you'll see Adam Levitas, who was our project manager. We're both going to be attending these meetings.
Okay.
You'll see Judy Denny. There's always going to be kind of an overlap of 2 or 3 of us at these meetings. It just so happens right now when we issue the RFQ or RFP for architect services or any of the early deliverables or duties, I'll probably take a more active role in executing those duties versus Adam.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And Mark, I don't know if you're familiar with everyone in the on the committee. I know you probably met them, or you saw them once in the interview. Other than that, maybe everyone could just say a few words to get you acclimated. As you know, I've been asked to chair this, and I have experience in a lot of different areas. 50 years in corporate life, I said. So I've done just about everything in that time, including project management and building power plants, designing chemical plants. So I think I'm probably the jack of all trades here, maybe master of none. So I'll pass it over now, just the way I'm seeing. Dave, if you could maybe a few words just to acquaint Mark with your background.
Yeah, good evening, Mark. I'm a resident engineer for WSP US. We administer large construction contracts, mostly for the Connecticut DOT and federal projects. Currently, I'm the resident engineer on the Walk Bridge Replacement Program. If you're familiar with it, it's a railroad bridge over the Norwalk River in South Norwalk. I've been in the industry for around 23 years, starting out as a bridge inspector, running through some project management, and then in my current role for the last 10 or 12 years, a resident engineer on projects. So nice to meet you, Mark.
Nice to meet you. Dave, did you work for DOT at all?
I did a co-op there for a year.
Okay.
In Newington when I was just getting out of college, and to be honest with you, 1 year was enough there.
Yeah, I know a couple of guys there. Bart Sweeney,
Yes.
he's a higher ranking engineer there now, and Chuck Warrington, my colleague who does work on the school side, was a DOT engineer for several years, and then Scott Hill. I've gotten to know him a little bit. Good group.
Yeah, Bart's our lead bridge engineer on the bridge replacement project now.
Yeah, I know Bart from the Yukon days.
Oh yeah.
If you want some stories, let me know. We can talk offline.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Eileen, you would be next on my screen here. We can't hear.
Now we have no audio.
We have no audio, Eileen. Maybe we'll pass Eileen until she solves technical issues. And Joe, you're next on my screen.
Sure. So Joe Paradiso, a resident of Madison. A lot like Joe, I've been living the corporate life for the last 25, 30 years. I head up facilities, engineering, environmental health and safety, digital systems and security. That's kind of the ballpark I play in. My background is really in environmental health and safety management and regulations of those kinds of things, remediation and regulated waste. So this project's been interesting. So, you know, I'm looking forward to working with colleagues and hearing from you guys and seeing this project move along.
Great.
Thank you, Joe. AJ, you'll be next.
Yep. Hi, Mark. Good to see you again. Name is AJ Miller. I currently work in software. I'm a director of software engineering for a healthcare company, but I do have a background in historic construction. I ran a small construction company for many years and got out of it, but still retained hopefully enough knowledge to help us along here. Been a resident for over a decade now, and I've got 3 kids in the school system, actively in elementary schools and preschool. So definitely a facility we'll utilize a lot. And, you know, I've been actively outreaching to people as I run into them at soccer games and other things. Hey, I'm on the committee. Ask me anything you have, give me any feedback you have. So trying to solicit as much feedback from the families that I'm interacting with on a day-to-day basis as I can, so we can hopefully build a facility that'll be useful for the whole town.
Great. AJ, was your experience in construction residential or commercial?
Mainly residential, but largely historic.
Okay,
So,
yeah. Do you know the Glicks in town, Travis Glick? And
we never crossed paths, but I know of them. Yeah.
okay, yeah, because I know he does some historic residential stuff in town.
Yeah, so I worked quite a bit with CK Architects down in Guilford as well. I don't know if you're familiar with their work, but Russ over there sort of leads up the charge. I know him very well.
Perfect. Nice to meet you, AJ.
Nice to meet you.
And I just texted Eileen to see if she might be available. Joe, can you ask Jacqueline to let me in as a participant? Jacqueline, can you let Eileen in as a participant?
Is she on the cell phone, Joe?
She texted me on via cell, so but I don't know what her connection is. I don't know if she was.
Yeah, there's
I don't
one attendee with it. There's no name. I'll move them up and then we'll, I guess we'll see.
Yes, she says yes.
Okay.
She must
All
have heard you, or she couldn't have heard you, but
No, yeah, she could. All right, I promoted her.
okay.
Sorry about that. My computer is super old and I tried to use it. I shouldn't have. I'm Eileen Davis. I lived in town for 31 years. I'm a retired CPA and I know nothing about building.
But you know about money, and that's important.
So doing that, what I'd like to do is review the project management agreement. I think we had a quick note from Mark on where they got it from. I had some questions, but I'll save. I'll let anybody in on the committee, if you have any questions on the agreement, if this would be the time to ask Mark.
I have a couple questions.
So Eileen, you got the floor.
Okay, so on page 2.2, it says reimbursable expenses as provided for in Article 4, but the proposal said there would be no reimbursable expenses, and I was curious as to why that changed.
Page 2.2.
Yeah. Or did I misread that? Is it saying it's inclusive of general office overtime? Oh, except for reimbursable. So it's indicating to me that there are reimbursable expenses.
That's provided in Article 4. Yeah, so yeah, if there are no reimbursables, then those should come out, and I'll strike that.
Okay. Then on page 4, 7.8, it said the agreement is governed by the laws of the state of New Jersey. Is that accurate?
Well, our parent company is the headquarters is New Jersey.
Okay.
But our division is run out of Madison, Connecticut.
Okay.
It's not unusual. I don't know what our legal people will say, but it's not unusual to have a state other than the state it's in. Delaware, all the contracts that I used to sign were based on the laws in Delaware, where most corporations were incorporated. So that's not that unusual. Or at least I don't find it unusual.
And my last one was on page 5, 7.11. It says that we have to provide an office trailer or temporary office, but that also in the proposal said that there would be would not be required.
Yeah, we typically don't. What we do is we typically work out of the contractor's trailer if we need to work. But again, we're so close to the site
Okay,
that so I'll just take that out. We
okay,
don't do that.
that's just what I picked up.
Okay,
Um,
pretty easy.
Anyone else? Dave or Joe? No. I did have a couple. On page 1.3, it says the project manager will not be required to provide any services in connection with remediation, abatement, or rendering harmless hazardous materials. Fuss and O'Neill had, they had a couple of, they did both a survey and a cost estimate. Does that mean that you would not be interacting with Fuss and O'Neill?
No, what that's saying there, Joe, is we'll help you hire that consultant. We'll oversee that consultant, but their services are completely independent from ours. So if Fuss and O'Neill, for some reason, failed in their delivery and there was a lawsuit that was required to be filed as a result of their lack of service, we wouldn't be rolled into that because we're literally just a conduit to hire them for you. It's similar to the architect as well, that we're not designers, designers to code. If the architect makes a code related issue, we wouldn't necessarily get involved with those types of issues. So that's what that's generally there for.
You would oversee the expenses.
Oh yeah,
and
we oversee their
normal.
Yeah, we coordinate their services no differently than we coordinate the architect or the contractor, but we're not responsible for what they do. So if they screw up or the contractor screws up in the remediation, we're not liable for their errors.
So if they're like every other contractor, why are they called out separately?
You'd be surprised. Architects also will have this in their agreement. Hazardous material is something that our insurance provider, architect's insurance provider, don't generally want to get involved with because it's such a massive exposure. And again, a part of I should qualify everything that I'm saying here is that I don't get involved with the legal discussions here. Anything that you want to challenge or question, I would bring to our legal department or legal support to provide any of those types of commentary. I'm giving you layman's terms, explanations.
So with that, if that falls through, so it's not unusual to have a carve out for environmental liability and stuff like that. So will you be bidding this out to other firms other than Fuss and O'Neill, or is your plan to move forward with Fuss and O'Neill?
Yeah, I don't think, Joe, we would bid it out because we already have everything we need. We have the survey, we have the only thing we don't have, but we do have in our budget is the development of the abatement specs and any abatement drawings. So I don't think, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, that we would want to put this out for bid. I don't know how another firm would actually interpret the results of another environmental firm. Like if I'm
Yep, I hear you.
Be up to the building committee and then supported by the Board of Selectmen, but if they recommend, which would be very common if you had somebody who already did most of the work, wouldn't necessarily rebid something that would be services already sort of half rendered or 3/4 rendered. You wouldn't want to start over again, but it's up to the building committee and then the Board of Selectmen ultimately.
And I don't know, Bill, there might have been a selection process for Fuss and O'Neill to get the survey and the study work already, and they were selected through a competitive process. That I don't know.
I wasn't involved myself either.
Yeah.
What I understand, Fuss and O'Neill is a top-notch firm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there'd be, if they're, and they did give us a budget estimate, and that budget estimate is included in our overall project budget for the exact amount, pretty much the exact amount they said. There'd be no, at least I wouldn't see a compelling reason why we would bid it out.
No, yeah, I wasn't asking to bid it out, just to be clear. I guess what I was saying was commenting on the contract. If the intent is for college to go forward with Fuss and O'Neill, then, but you're trying to skate some liability there. It's not a major issue because I'd probably pick Fuss and O'Neill myself. But
Yeah, and Joe, just to be clear, they're not a consultant to us. They're not a sub-consultant to Colliers. They're a
Okay.
direct consultant to the town of Madison.
okay,
Yes.
okay, that's different. Thank you
Yeah.
for that clarification.
And I had a question on 2.1. This should be a simple question. The fee is paid out monthly with a set amount. I imagine that's common with the town. I don't think that's sort of not what we would approve. It's not for us to approve or not approve, but I assume that the town does. That's how they pay out.
Yeah, it's completely up to the town if they want to go that route versus an hourly. It's completely up to the town.
Okay. And let's see. 7.1 miscellaneous. The
Sorry.
all notice required or permitted. It's listed to Peggy Lyons and Bill McMinn. And I imagine Peggy is the signatory for all these contracts as a representative of the town. Would that be
That is
correct?
correct. That is correct.
Yeah, and I guess if there are notices that the committee should know about, and considering the committee is going to be responsible for this, I would like to be added to that. And if in my absence, Dave Spurley would be notified.
So you want me to add with copy to you, Joe, and to Dave?
Perfect.
Okay. What address should we use?
The first selectman's office would be my recommendation.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
the
it should
email
be-
would be his. His
Yeah, it should-
email.
any, that's a good point, Bill. The email would be mine, but it would be, if it's a paper or a letter, it would go to the 8 Campus
8
Drive.
Campus Drive under the chairman's, name, and I assume you have a mailbox here.
If I have one, I don't know it yet, Bill. One more mailbox to check, if I do. Jacqueline, is there a mailbox for committee chairs like this or not?
It's just something that I would get to you.
Okay, thank you, Janet.
Joe, are you and Dave co-chairs or Dave's vice chair?
Dave is vice chair,
Okay, yep, could do that.
but so far he's actually, I think, done more chairing than I have, because I was on vacation. I was on vacation for about 3 weeks, and then I went away for this last weekend. I think that's all I had.
Okay, yeah, again, if you have other comments or anybody else has comments, feel free to forward them to me. I will make these edits that we addressed this evening and then send it back, I guess, through Bill for you all to review. And if you need to provide additional commentary, that's fine too.
It should come to me.
Okay, come to you. Okay,
With copies to Dave and to Bill,
okay.
and presumably to Peggy too. I did have one other comment. The scope of services mentions the RFQ, RFP, and I looked at that. I thought there might be some conflicts in there, but the RFP was well written, thanks to you, Bill, and whomever you had, Bill McMinn. There don't appear to be anything unreasonable in there, and there doesn't seem to be anything omitted. I did have a slight question on how the scope in 1.2, and the scope of the RFP, how they interact. But I imagine they're complementary and not in any way in conflict.
Yeah, they're not contradictory. This is high level stuff, 1.2. It's a bit more granular with the actual scope of services that Bill included with the RFP.
Okay. With that, does anybody have any questions or any the next step, but anybody have any other questions or comments on the management agreement, the project management agreement? One last-
This may be a silly question, but I assume this also has to go through the town's legal department before it gets approved, right? Okay.
I was just going to say that. The next step is it goes to the legal department. So
Okay.
I believe we have to make we have to take actually a vote here to with the additions and subtractions that Mark will be making, that we pass this on to the legal to legal with a copy to us. Be sure that the any changes that we noted are made, but it also gives it should also give the town a chance to the town legal department a chance to begin looking at this. Al?
Joe, I think it's actually a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that the committee has looked at the contract and is recommending it onward. The selectmen will, of course, forward it to legal counsel. But I think your recommendation is to the selectmen.
Okay, thank you, Al. So do I have a motion to recommend to the selectmen that we move the contract that we recommend that we accept this contract with the changes as stated in this meeting?
I move that we recommend this agreement with the changes that we've made to the first selectman.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just want to make sure I heard that. It's the Board of Selectmen that's being recommended to.
Oh, I
Not
thought
the
that's what
first
I said.
selectman.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I guess you have to raise your hand, I guess it is. Any opposed? None. Okay, so passed that we recommend that this to the Board of Selectmen that we accept the agreement as with the changes as noted in the meeting. The next item on the agenda is a review of the Fuss and O'Neill environmental reports. And I guess I'm gonna lean on either Dave or Joe, or maybe Joe and Dave, and Mark, as since you've been involved also. What is in those agreements with, can you give us a thumbnail of what's in those agreements? And how we should be using them going forward?
I'll give you my 2 cents. The hazmat report that was generated is something that you were going to need with the project. The estimate of remediation we included in the budget when we were developing the total project budget. So the only thing left for Fuss and O'Neill to do now is we would need to engage them for, this is now building, I'm not talking about site, we'll talk about site in a second, but from the building perspective, is they would need to do the specifications and the abatement drawings as part of the architect's plans and specs when it goes to bid. So we're way ahead of where we typically are at this point of a project, since we've already gotten 90% of the work done. On the site, and Joe or anybody else, you can add on your commentary to that as well. The other thing about the site is you did a phase 1, and I don't know if the phase 1 recommended a phase 2. If it does, we'll need to engage Fuss and O'Neill to do a phase 2, which usually means soil sampling and a bit more detail on the assessment of the site. But I don't know if the phase 1 recommended a phase 2. And Joe, I don't know if you caught that when you looked at it.
I don't recall if it recommends a phase 2, but there were a couple items in there that jumped out. I'll just back up to say, the hazardous materials assessment was pretty thorough. And the budget that came out of that seems to be in the ballpark. There's only 2 comments on that, and I'm not sure who to follow up or can comment on this, but the estimate that comes out of that waste report is 4 or 5 years old. So the budget number is 4 or 5 years old, but I know there was some escalation included in the budget.
Yeah.
I'd like to confirm, do the costs change? Does it go from 800,000 to $1 million now that a few years have gone by? 2 is, from that I concluded, looked at it. I don't think the waste assessment or the hazardous materials assessment includes lead or abatement. I did see in the budget a small number for air monitoring and OSHA compliance during lead abatement. They have identified a few materials and spaces that likely have lead and will need remediation, but I think it specifically states that lead abatement and remediation is outside of that estimate. So it's an additional cost that's probably not in the budget.
No, well, we carried that in our demo costs.
You did?
So when we were developing the cost per square foot for renovation, part of that value included demolition. And with that, we included, any lead demolition or lead abatement within that
Oh, that's
$300
good.
a square foot.
Okay, and that is I think the disposal is then included in the hazardous materials assessment from Fussino.
I think so.
Okay, so then that closes that. And with regard to the phase 1 report that was done, that's a phase 1 environmental site assessment. It mentions 3 underground storage tanks. It mentions then on the end of that report that they did a thorough records request from the state, and that they did not find any state closure reports on any of those tanks. So does anyone from the town have any records of underground storage tank closures and closeout with the state? If not, they may then push for a phase 2 to do some site characterization, soil sampling, etc. We will have to get tank closures before we can move forward.
I'd like to recognize Erin Mannix, who's joined, and she can comment as she now appears to be wanting to do based on the video.
I'm sorry that I'm late. I had a advisory committee for Planning and Zoning Commission. I actually, when we looked into the DECD assessment grant opportunity, I reached out to Kathleen Payne from Fuss and O'Neill, who had done the initial analyses and was part of this from the beginning. And I think Mark, I think you've spoken with Kathleen in the past as well too. And because this is all new to me, this is uncharted territory for what I've done. Kathleen did indicate, just rough from my notes, kind of walking us through this, that DEEP does need closure documentation on the USTs, the underground storage tanks, which we do not have, to my knowledge.
Okay.
So she said, otherwise, soil borings in general in the area need to confirm no contamination, and then the forms need to be submitted to DEEP. This is all your language, so you'll know exactly what she's talking about.
That's what I'm anticipating them asking, if we cannot find reports in our files.
Yes, we're anticipating that has to be done. From my conversations with Kathleen, she kind of gave that an $8,000 to $10,000 price point. Overall, I think the assessment, the grant that we have is for more than what we will likely need for the assessment end of things. As far as remediation, we don't have, this doesn't include any actual remediation. This grant, this $200,000 grant, is simply for assessment purposes.
Okay.
Just to kind of distinguish that. And that doesn't mean or preclude us from applying for any other remediation related grant opportunities. The other item she identified was the septic. I think this was all from the phase 1.
Yeah, the septic is in there.
With possible contaminants. which we can kind of revisit when the septic design is underway. If the system is adequate, then, we may not want to go digging around. Kind of is pretty much, what I got out of her. She did say that if you do need to do borings there, or whatnot, that's roughly in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. And then the building, she recommended a supplemental walkthrough, for mold and water infiltration, as I think Mark had indicated in one of his last correspondence, which was a few years ago, I guess, with Kathleen. So a $1,500 inspection, specifications to outline. So we need the specs to outline the scope of work. She said then we have to identify asbestos containing materials, lead paint, mold. If there's water, where's it coming from? And then let's see, after abatement, have the architect come through and see where the envelope, needs to be sealed if we need to do that. Soil contamination, that's mostly with the underground storage and septic system. I think that 2018 email to Mark was $128,000 for abatement. She did go through and kind of said that still kind of runs true. As far as areas surrounding the building, testing for lead, she said, it is required if children under the age of 6 are there, and if we have some issue with bare soils, you can't have that area exposed. And so as my understanding is, as far as the remediation, some of that just includes capping and landscaping in those areas might be sufficient with respect to the lead. And she said conservatively, it's probably about $40,000 in additional assessment that's needed on the property at this point, which is well under our $200,000 grant allowance.
And just to confirm that one is for everyone on the group, we're not saying there is contamination. We're saying we need to assess if there is additional contamination. But if it's found, though, any remediation costs, Mark, please confirm, are not included in the budget.
No, they are.
They are.
Yeah, that's why we have contingency to cover, what is unknown. For what we knew at the time, we put it in the budget, like we had a specific cost for the building abatement, so we put that in there. Contingency covers the unknowns.
What is a contingency again?
It was 10%.
It's $716,000.
Okay, yeah, I mean, soil remediation is not going to cost that much. Oh, sounds good.
That's just the contingency for abatement is $716,000.
No, that's total contingency.
That's total contingency for the building.
Yeah, we don't want to spend the contingency all in one place, though.
Yeah,
That's my point.
You might be looking, if you found something between the additional assessment and the digging up and disposing, you might be looking at $100K if you find something. And I doubt, unless there was a leaky tank, you might not. And even then, what comes out of those tanks tends to stick close to the tanks. It's not water soluble, doesn't spread very far, so you're not digging up much dirt. So I don't suspect that kind of issue. However, I do think I would recommend we can, whatever it takes to get started on that additional assessment sooner rather than later. Because if you have to do things like officially close out tanks, get that cleared with the state, do some soil sampling, that can all add time before and stop us from doing anything else in terms of, getting into the building and doing any other remediation and stuff like that. I don't know if there's an appetite for doing any of that work up front.
And also, Joe, to pick up on that, the sooner we have that information, I think that gives us the opportunity, if there's other funding opportunities through through brownfields for us to apply and use that as our documentation of what needs to be done.
Glad you're on the team.
I had sat down and talked with Peggy Lyons for a good hour one day, and one of the things she said was once you get outside the building, That isn't necessarily going to, that's an opportunity to get funding that doesn't come directly from our budget. That there are things that are, there are a lot of issues and a lot of things in play, outside that, off the perimeter of just the footprint of the building. And so the things like this would seem to fit into that category. That's outside the building. Maybe it's started in the building, but it's something that we may be able to look for additional funding and not make that a deduct from the 16 million that we have budgeted for the building.
Now, Joe, a question for you. So this work to do this additional assessment it does not necessarily hold up any architecture work that has to happen, or that would also kind of be blocked.
I'll leave that. I'll put that question to Mark.
No, AJ, that has no impact on the architect doing their job.
Okay, so if we were to, whatever plans we come up with, this kind of should be done in addition to that.
Yeah, this is in concert, concurrent with any architectural services.
Do it in parallel, get it out of the way.
Yeah.
This way, when it comes time to stick a shovel in the ground, you're not then worried about where the tanks, is the soil contaminated and doesn't hold up the project. That's why I would recommend we run it in parallel with the architectural work.
And it sounds like we've already got a source of money for it, right? So it's not.
We have a source of money for the assessment.
Yes.
For the assessment for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That financial agreement is fully executed and ready to go.
Good. Thank you for that, Eric.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, I had a couple questions. Mark, in regard to the report that Fuss O'Neill put together in 2015, I believe, and if you haven't done so already, I think we need to have them review that report just to ensure that there weren't any regulations that have changed since 2015. I mean, the testing and sampling, things could have been changed a little bit, I'm not sure. The other thing too, reading through the report, they didn't know what the use of the building was going to be, and it seems to be very inclusive, which is good, on everything that's there. There was a note in there that due to the building being vacant, and again, not knowing its future use, that I'm not sure that they included the stipulations for having children in there, which we may have. So I don't know if that changes the lead abatement or compliance issue at all. And then thirdly, when you get to the budget, it looks like they included everything in their budget. I see a big ticket item is remediating like asphaltic coating or whatever is on the foundation. But if we're not doing any demo of exterior walls, then that cost could be substantially reduced, right? Other than penetrations for septic or whatever else that we're doing there, I would assume, right?
Exactly, right. This was a worst case scenario, Dave. If we're not touching the foundation, there may be an area. Well, it depends on what happens. I'm not gonna.
Right, elevator or something.
Yes, something that may impact that. So the 186,000 may be 20,000.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Even though the estimate was done in 2018, even with escalation, we probably are still within budget. I predict at this point.
Yeah, hard to tell, but we'll know more once we know exactly what's being impacted by the design.
So the intent is to move forward with Fuss and O'Neill to review the documents, to put specifications together, and then put out a bid for abatement first. Is that
no? It'll go along, Dave, with the architectural plans and specifications. Okay. We're not going to look to do an early abatement project, I don't think. So what Fuss and O'Neill will do is put together the abatement specs, the abatement drawings, and then give those to the architect. They'll insert those in their plans and specs for the full build out, and then one contractor would bid the whole scope of work.
So we'd have an abatement contractor separate from our GC.
Well, well, again, it depends on how, there are a lot of ways to approach this. The abatement contractor will either be a subcontractor to a general contractor or a construction manager, but either way, it's the contractor, not the town. If for some reason the town elected they wanted to have this done separate, away from the general contractor, away from the construction manager, then the town would have a specific agreement with an abatement contractor. But I don't know if that's the direction this project will go. Typically, Dave, it's a subcontractor to the general contractor, the builder who's gonna do all of the work.
Yeah, that
Is
makes
there
sense.
an advantage to doing it the other way?
The only advantage, AJ, is you would minimize any markups that the general contractor or the construction manager would have. But it may lead to more complications because in some cases there's a fair amount of coordination. So for example, like we were talking about an elevator, if for some reason a part of the addition or a addition impacts that foundation mastic, well, you know, it's good to have the contractor that's responsible for the elevator shaft to be coordinating with the abatement contractor where exactly to do the abatement. So again, I think the good news is that we don't have to make that decision tonight. You know, we can make that decision in 6 months once we know who we're working with as an architect and once we see where the plan is going.
What I'm hearing on this point, on the having looked at the Fuss and O'Neill environmental reports, is that there will be additional testing going on from the necessary to get to a full abatement plan, and that plan will be done in or bid in coordination with a general contractor or a construction manager, and implemented at the same time. You know, if somebody's going to be tearing down walls as part of the general contractor and we tearing down walls, there's no point in doing the abatement on the walls first and then have them just torn down later. That it would be done simultaneously.
Yeah, usually, Joe, it's a demo and abatement are together. You know, most demolition contractors have abatement certification. So if you're taking down a wall that has plaster that has asbestos, well, you know, that contractor is going to do the abatement and the demolition. It'll be one effort versus trying to take the plaster off, package it, get rid of it, and then somebody else comes in later and takes the wood down. Usually, it's one contractor that does it all.
The advantage of doing it simultaneously as opposed to having a separate abatement effort done early just to get it done. Would that be correct?
Yeah. Again, I can't foresee if we were in a real time crunch and we really needed to get this going, or if there was a grant that needed to be spent in the next 6 months that covered abatement. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll do some abatement and demolition, you know, in advance of a general contractor or construction manager being brought on board. But absent that, what we typically see is that this is rolled into the larger scope of work.
It's important to just remember that the asbestos and the lead abatement are hand in hand, or it's the same thing as the demolition in this case, because the materials are all over the place.
Right.
Which is separate from, which is a little bit separate from what we talked about earlier, which was the additional property assessment that needs to be done, that, you know, finding, possibly closing out tanks. So that's a separate issue that I think may have to be dealt with separately through Fuss and O'Neill.
Is that everyone's understanding? Is that,
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mark, is that your understanding also? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess the only the last question is, or I think I know the answer to this, is who takes this forward? And I imagine that's your place, Mark.
Correct. Yeah, we would facilitate any follow-up inspections and consulting services.
And you'll be putting the plans together for the architect and the abatement, and having that ready for bid sometime down the road.
Well, we're coordinating it. We're not developing the plans ourselves, but we're coordinating that Fuss and O'Neill's gets the plans and the specs to whichever architect is hired down the road. Yes.
Okay.
So, Mark, I guess I have a question. With the need to do further assessment and because of the town's bid policies, is this something that we need to go out and advertise for to do this?
For Fuss and O'Neill?
Well,
Or
to,
the hazard.
right, because of the estimated cost associated with this assessment.
Yeah, Aaron, we talked about this before. I think you hopped on. And,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You know, when we were engaged early on, we were told to work with Fuss and O'Neill because they developed the original report.
Yes,
That might have been done through a competition, through a competitive process. I don't know. Bill McMinn didn't know either because it predated our involvement with this. So it could, in theory, be a continuation of that competitive selected process from maybe 2015 or 2014, whenever they were engaged. And we're just now adding on the additional scope of service. So I remember when I reached out to Kathleen about getting this this estimate, she gave me a proposal to do it, and it was approved by the town, and we didn't competitively submit it,
right.
issue an RFP. We just, again, it was a continuation of services that was already engaged and maybe done through competition previously. So it would be again another continuation of a consultant services that was selected through the town's process.
We do have some pre-approved vendors that we use off of a pre-approved sheet. Make it simple, we have some pre-approved vendors. I don't know who selected them, and I don't know if they were on, who already did this, but we can look into that.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. I there's clearly value in continuing with Kathleen, I think. And she, as she calls it, stalks me regularly with email just to check in and see where we are. And she's excited that this went forward, but fully expected if there's a process involved, that we would let her know. And so I just wanted to confirm that just because of the value. Okay. Thank you for your explanation.
The one thing, Aaron, I would add is, the state of Connecticut has on-call services. And I know that TRC, BL, and Fuss O'Neill are usually 3 of the environmental firms that are kind of on call. So it's potentially they were on a pre-approved list and the state just picked one. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So we'll close this out with Mark, you are the one who was coordinating how we go forward with you're the one who's coordinating how we go forward.
Correct.
We'll stop there. And for the assessment, Aaron, I think that still falls under your supervision. That's the right
Well,
word.
I think for sure, if we're going to follow through just because of the grant process and documentation, Mark and I will need to coordinate.
Yep.
Moving
Okay.
forward. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. We'll move on to is there anything we have to approve on that? I don't know who's the parliamentarian here. Is there anything that we have to actually do here, or this
No.
discussion just clarifies what's already in place? Jacqueline, you had something
Yeah,
to say?
nope, I think you guys were all good. It was just a discussion.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the update from the facilities director, Bill McMinn, who happens to be right here. Thank you, Bill.
So I might have to jump off. I have a 6:30 building committee meeting, and it's right in the other room, so they'll come get me when they need me. I, at the request of the first select woman, looked into securing the building with fixing the doors so you can get in and out, cleaning the place, and the request was for cameras. So I talked to our ID department. There's a bunch of different kinds of cameras that we can look into. Most of the cameras are on a network and in our security system, and there's no real infrastructure at that building, so that's sort of a big deal. So I don't know if we're ready for that, but we could definitely look into it and talk about it. Once I get a proposal back for fixing the doors, how many doors do we want to fix? I say broom swept, let's just pick up the debris. I'm also concerned about if you're going to be going in and out, the lighting, the building is not really habitable, I would say, for public use, and definitely not so much for, employees who know what they're getting into, board members and committee members who know what they're getting into. We're all covered under our, liability insurance, and contractors that work for us have their own, but we definitely don't want this open to the public at this time.
And Bill, just to let you know how this started, I actually went to Peggy and asked, I had a different ask. I said, we need to keep people out of the building, including people who are going in, surreptitiously. Halloween is coming up, and there are places who like to burn things down on mischief night. What I asked for was an additional police presence and patrols. And it sort of devolved into these further requests. But the way that I looked at it, we just need to keep, we have people who go in who are covered, but what we don't want are the people who are going in at night. There has been additional graffiti just in the time that I've been going in and taking photos of the interior. And so this came out of that request. And I hope it also got to the police department that, an increase of patrols, an increase of checks, and especially in and around Halloween is also part of the plan from the town, a support from the town.
So that's why I brought it up. I'm going to get a proposal. We can look at it. We can add to it. We can subtract to it. The contractor that I use quite often, I told him that I was meeting with the committee tonight. I was hoping to get some kind of proposal by the end of the week, so I could bring it back to you, and I'll email it to you, and you could, pass it out, and we could go from there. We could, and Peggy did talk about the increase in security, and she was going to talk to the police department about that.
Okay.
So I won't do anything or spend any money until I review it with you.
Hey, Bill, should we add some signage to the building maybe? I don't know if there's any there now.
I've never seen any, if there is.
I mean, that's a cheap ad maybe to try to keep some people out.
And what would you like the signage to say?
I don't know, we could do some, no trespassing signs or area under surveillance, those standard signs. Even if we don't have cameras, they don't know that.
Okay.
I think in that, if you're going to be in the building, Bill, things like closing and locking the windows, I know some of them are open, or at least open a crack, which would prevent, the easy surreptitious access to the building. And in terms of the exits, if there was ever, if someone does start a fire in there and they can't get to the main door, they're trapped. And so I was concerned about that as a hazard, that we need another means of egress. Should there be, for any reason, be someone who is unable to get out through the door, into the door they came in, the main door they came in.
Yeah, I apologize. I need to run to another meeting. I have the list, and I'll be back in touch with you guys.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
All right,
Thank
Bill.
you.
I guess I'm a little confused why we're cleaning the building before we demolish potentially a bunch of stuff, but
I don't think it's cleaning as much, JJ, as it is cleaning it out. If you've been in the building,
no, yeah, at the beginning of the call, we were talking about how I've not been in the building yet.
Yeah,
so.
no, there's, I've been in it several dozen times. It's filled with, desks and chairs and books and, when they walked out of that building in 2004, other than taking personal belongings, they almost didn't take anything else. So, yeah,
Okay.
it was cleaned out of old furniture and stuff.
One of the interesting things about the Fuss and O'Neill report from 2015 is there's a complement of photos from that time period, from like 2015, maybe it was 2014. And the building was in considerably better shape in 2014, 2015 than it is now. There's been a lot of deterioration. There's a lot of shell casings in there, bullet casings from ordnance used in some of the drills that they did. There's red paint. Many, or I don't know, maybe not many, but some of the fluorescent tubes have been broken and are, glasses, the pieces are lying on the floor. There's some real hazards. I mean, a trip in there is a trip to the, if you trip in there, it's a trip to the hospital. It's a trip to the emergency room. So I think that's the kind of thing that we need, if we're going to do it. I mean, first of all, we should keep people out. And if any people, and as long as there are people going in, we need to make it at least safe to walk through.
Do we have to concern ourselves with any abatement of any of the things we're throwing out during that phase?
No.
Okay.
You're
talking, Joe.
The asbestos, the lead, it's all bound up. As long as we're not disturbing the materials, ripping holes in walls, ripping out insulation, ripping off molding and trim and door frames, as long as we're not doing any kind of destructive demolition work, everything should stay intact. You could walk through the building, assuming trip hazards and things like that are clear, it'll be relatively safe. But from an abatement perspective, no, it's okay to walk through.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, if the desks were painted in lead paint, and we're throwing them out, is that
No.
are we liable in some way? So
I think Bill said something about broom clean was his maybe his standard, which if that's what he's going to do, that's I think that's more than adequate.
Broom clean.
Yeah, Joe, I think he's just going through the hallways and sweeping up the rubber bullet shells and the pieces and parts that are all over the floor. He's not removing fixtures and furniture.
Yeah.
We're not clearing the building out entirely.
He would need dumpsters for that.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like a big project if we're going to clean all that out. Okay.
The next item was are we finished here? I don't think there's anything we have to do other than note that Bill is going to get back to us with the proposal. Any questions before we move on? No. So the next one.
One comment. When we went through the building, she's off. When we have a Fuss and O'Neill look at their additional assessment, Joe, if you remember, in the basement, there was one room, the whole floor is covered in oil.
Yes, it's the cafeteria.
Yeah, well, what is that and why?
I guess the answer is the same one I'll give you now. I give you then is I don't know.
Yeah, I was looking for you to give me an answer. I was saying we should include that.
Find out. Yes.
Fuss and O'Neill should look into that. Maybe it's just cooking oil. Hopefully it's not PCB oil.
The other is the 100 gallons of paint in there that are 75 gallons of paint, gallon cans that are leaking. I don't think that's not noted in any of the Fuss and O'Neill reports, and that looks like it might have been something added over the course of time as a place to store unused paint, used and partial paint cans, and some of them are leaking. So there's paint on the floor.
We should have brought those last Saturday to the cleanup thing at the town. We could have got rid of them for free.
Actually, you don't have to do that. You can take used paint cans as long as they're not leaking to any paint store. I've been cleaning out my basement, and I've been taking quarts that I looked at. I painted this room in 2002. And I still have the leftover paint, so I've been taking the can to Rings End. They just take it back.
I think it holds true for residential, not so much
That's
public
not
entity,
commercial.
commercial.
Well, we don't have to tell them it's from a school. Come on. The next item 6, review budget. That was just a placeholder. One of the things that Jacqueline said was we can't talk about anything if it's not on the agenda. And we have made a couple of comments about the budget and what's on the budget and what's not on the budget. I don't think this is a time for a full review of the budget, but there may be another time when we want to do that. But if anybody has any comments or questions about what we've discussed that might impact the budget, this would be, there's an opening here that we can do it now. Nope, I should say good for video. I see a lot of heads shaking no. The last, I guess it's my report, discussed the interface with the Academy Community Center Advisory Committee. I've made a couple of calls and talked with Bill Stableford. He is just getting his group together. He hasn't even had a full committee meeting yet where everybody's present. He is meeting once a week on Thursdays, so he's trying to jumpstart his process. I'll tell you what he told me, or his what he's focusing on. First, he's meeting weekly to get organized. He is doing interviews and I guess time with special interest groups. And he put out a list of about 20 of those special interest groups. He is planning on site visits to other community centers. He's planning on 1 or 2 town forums, informational forums. And he's also talking about a survey, doing another survey, and hoping to get additional input from more residents than did the last one, which was, there were 800 returns of surveys for the last survey he did, and he's doing, and he's hoping to get about 2,000. The feedback I gave him was that, yes, he has to organize his committee, but the special interest groups, that may be like a subcommittee issue. If we know that he's going to, if our group knows he's going to be talking to certain groups at certain times, if any of our group wants to join him, if you have a special interest in the gym or the theater or cafeteria or the ball fields, this joining, we would request to join him, join in those focus groups. The site visits to other community centers, we should do that. We can do that independently. There's really kind of no reason to double up on that. We could do it on our own time. The town forums, my recommendations was that we should do those together. We should present one single face to the town, not 2 different committees with we have enough time determining what we're doing separately, much less having the town do it. And the survey, the only thing I said to him was it had to be one that was available in time for us to actually use it, especially if we're as we're putting together something for architects. I don't know if that's going to be if that's going to be possible, but he is planning on doing an additional survey.
I have a question, Joe.
Sure.
And probably directed more toward Mark. When you said you started putting your schedule together, did you start putting dates in when we need to solicit for architects and when we need to select, kind of working, backwards from our completion date from construction?
So Dave, we're working off of the project schedule that was issued as part of our RFP. If you recall from our interview, we had a macro schedule, we called it. We're in the process of creating a milestone schedule just for the architect selection. So we're starting to plug in dates. And again, this is stuff that has to be reviewed with Bill or whoever else from the town is involved with that process. But
Would be us,
For our
Mark.
next meeting, we'll have a more specific schedule for the architect selection process. And then once we have the architect on board, we'll create a very similar milestone schedule for the design phase that gets us to basically going out to bid. So you'll see a series of very detailed schedules coming out of us very shortly.
Yeah, I was just trying to think ahead, you know, if the Bills group is doing some more research and solicitation from, you know, the public on ideas for the community center, I was kind of trying to target a date when we would need all that information from him. So do you have a target date kind of when we would select?
Yeah, I think the schedule had it going through the end of this year, Dave.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of wondering like a ballpark. So
Yeah, I do get a little nervous when I hear about more this not I don't say more discussion, that's the wrong thing.
yeah.
But you know, we develop a budget based upon a fairly specific scope of service. And I'm just going to make this point that if the survey comes back and says, "Oh, we want a pool," well, our budget didn't account for a pool or something else that could potentially drive, you know, dollars. Unless, of course, you know, if we want to add a pool, we can add $3 million to the budget, and town wants to approve it, then great. But if we're going to hold to the $15.9 million, we've got to be very careful with what added features are put into this project.
Yeah. I wasn't really trying to ask a loaded question. It was more, you know, Mark, just to try to give, when does Bill have to get all of his stuff done to give to us, you know? And if that's the end of the year, Joe, then that's the day, right? And whatever surveys he's doing and information. You know, the one thing I would add, Mark, I know you haven't been to any of our previous meetings, but a lot of the committee's discussion was based around, you know, the use of the building and, you know, using your presentation and all the research and work you put in the past is great information. But I know there were questions from our committee, you know, about potential uses, not significant changes like you're bringing up, like pools and stuff, but like, you know, more of, oh, do we need a specific music room? Do we need, you know, small things like that. We can get into that in the future, but you know, but again, Joe, so I think we would try to relay information back to Bill's group on maybe some dates or hard dates that he would need to get us information back.
Mark, just maybe to add a little bit to what Dave said, we considered the work that was done, all the work was great work, but it's preliminary. That really the final, even the final layout of the building may be something that an architect has a better idea than we saw before, and there may be uses of the building that that come up even in the time period we have, whatever that time period we have, who that might alter that. There might be structural issues. You know, you're driving a hole in the wall on the lower level. You know, if there's a structural issue that would prevent us from doing that, that would change. You know, that changes the layout somewhat. It would change our plans somewhat. So we're
there's nothing,
we're open. You know, we are open to change, and if there's a need to alter what the current layout is, you know, that's something that we plan on looking at and taking seriously if you know, if we need to do that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that the plan that has been presented is crystallized and is gospel, and that's where we're going. What I'm saying is, you know, there are two ways to look at budgets. You either design to a budget or budget to a design. Typically, in this type of format, we are designing to a budget, right? So that design can look lots of different ways, right? We've got a $15.9 million total project budget. And I want to say the construction piece of that, including site and escalation, is around $12.3 million. Whatever they do for $12.3 million, and you're okay with it, great. It's just that you don't want, and I've seen this, you don't want somebody to come in and say, you know what, I think if we demolished half that building and built a brand new, you know, contemporary structure, that's great. That's now $40 million. I'm not sure the town has a talent for something like that, but whatever the town does or the designers that speaks to a $12.3 million building. Unless you want to go back for more money, that's all I'm trying to say is, what we do as project managers, as managers of budgets, is make sure that the town's protected from ideas and concepts that could lead to needing another $5 million, down the road. We'll be guiding you all the way through this process.
Mark, I guess I would ask too then, I guess it goes to, I see Al shaking his head, don't go back and ask for more money. But so certainly then the budget was formulated using some type of estimate of what we would have, some type of scope. Now, a pool is obvious scope creep. We want to eliminate scope creep, but moving a wall or making a room bigger, that might not be scope creep. How was that 12 point whatever million put together? Did you use, say, I don't know, if you guys did the Branford Community Center and you do the price per square foot, did you just translate over to our square footage? Or was there some preliminary design that you used to come up with that number?
So
that might be good to feed to, that knowledge might be good to feed to the design committee. So at least they have some basis of knowledge of what they're working from.
Yeah, so we broke it down, Joe, into 3 major categories. We took the entire 53,437 square feet, and we said some of it's just going to be core and shell, which is it's not going to be finished space. It's just going to be storage, mechanical space. Some of it's going to be heavily renovated with some new construction components, and the majority of it was going to be relatively minor renovations based upon, again, the programming that was for the beach and rec and youth and family services. We know that those are the 2 divisions coming into this building, and then flexibility all throughout the rest of the building. So we took those square footages and we applied at the time, a renovation cost per square foot that we typically see. So for the heavy renovation, new construction, it was about $400 a square feet. For the other spaces, it was less, $105, $100 a square foot, because you weren't going to be doing as much into those spaces. And all of that fed to building estimates. Then you add the site and the hazmat and miscellaneous demo. And then we added, obviously, a healthy escalation based upon what was happening in the market. That's what all led us to the $12.3 million for the building. So again, there was a specific program that was in place. Where the program goes, that doesn't matter. That could change. Some other architect can come in and say, I'd rather put them here, do whatever. But as long as we don't change structurally how much we're renovating on a moderate versus a heavy, we'll be fine. But if an architect comes in and tells you all that I think you should completely gut this building and start over, my job and Adam and others will say, just so you know, your building's going to go from $12.3 million to $20 million.
Thank you for that explanation.
To bring that, go ahead, Joe.
No, the last one was asked. So that's usual at that stage in not even design, but estimation, feasibility. Do you have maybe you shared them during your presentation, floor plans that show, okay, this area was budgeted at, this square footage, this area was budgeted at 400 per square foot. This area was budgeted at 150 square foot, just so we understand what envelopes we're working in within the building and what actual scope creep might actually be.
Yeah, so we did not share that, Joe, in our interview, because honestly, we don't know what it's going to look like. But we do have plans that very specifically spell out what areas were going to be considered the heavy renovation versus the light renovation, where youth and family services was going to go, and where parking. I mean, Al was part of all these conversations and all these presentations. They were color coded. I'm trying to find.
It might be helpful for us. So when we get into those conversations about what is scope creep, what is really going to trip the budget here or there,
Yeah, and I honestly don't mind sharing with you all at some point, what was shared with the town as we were going through this, you know, this final design or final push for the town. I'm actually opening up the PowerPoint now. Do you mind if I share my screen?
So Mark, what you have there is the same thing that you shared for the referendum or pre-referendum?
What I have, yeah, well, let me share. Can I share my screen?
You should be able to.
Okay.
Exactly. I think you have to do that.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good. I'm sharing
Okay.
it now.
Okay.
But I know a lot of the PowerPoint or the PowerPoint that I saw, Mark, was just based, I said potential use or possible use other
Right.
than family services
yes.
and beach and rec.
Right. So a lot of it was intended to be flexible, right? So if you can see here, so this is the lowest level, okay? And you've got the kitchen and the community space. This community space was intended to be whatever the community wants. It could be, there's no defined use. Other than youth and development having this little area down here, they really wanted this segregated spot for some of their services that they utilize. You know, on the main level now, again, community space was based upon these green. This is considered a major renovation space because it's right now it's an atrium that would be infilled. This area right here was considered major renovation because you're almost demolishing this classroom and creating a new vertical circulation core. The rest of it was really just the light renovation. So again, community space undefined. Park and rec actually would be down, or beach and rec would be down in this space right here. The gym wouldn't change. The auditorium up front wouldn't change.
Hey, one thing, Mark, did you guys look at revenue options? I know that was a big thing from that survey from 2019. A lot of the residents were asking about that.
Yeah, I do think Bill and his committee we're looking at those options. I'm trying to remember, Al, where we came down. I know the thought was to use maybe the auditorium. They could lease that for performances, or some of these other spaces if somebody wanted to lease them or rent them. But I know that they looked into that. Again, the upper level, you have youth and family services on the top floor here, the offices, and then again, all community space undefined. The circulation space remains. This is just looking down to that courtyard, so it'd be a 2-story volume. And this is the budget that I talked about that we shared with the public, the $400 a square foot, $105 a square foot, 100 for, you know, and all of this ties to, you know, the square footages here. Yeah, we didn't get into the details in the presentation.
I guess that's one of the questions I've had, and maybe this is something we need to coordinate with the design committee on, but, you know, everyone's sort of locked into the existing building, 53,000 square feet. And I don't know if that's all the space that we need. You know, maybe we only need 40,000 square feet. You know, I don't know what is actually, what the community actually needs. So it would be, I don't know if part of what the design committee can come up with is, hey, we really would like to have 6 meeting rooms and a space that does this and a space that does that. And we can add it up and go, oh, that's 35,000 square feet. Maybe we build a nicer 35,000 square foot building than, you know, a lightly renovated 53,000 square foot building. That question has been kind of rattling around in my head. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it.
Well, the one thing too, AJ, I think we have to think about is, you know, underserved things that we don't have in town currently, right? We have community space at the senior center. We have community space at town hall. You know, there's areas that we
In the
have.
library. Yeah.
The library, right? I mean, the library wasn't open, correct, when this was sent out. So some of these items that were going to be put here, maybe we're getting at the library now, right? So again, I think we got to coordinate with with Bill's group and see where.
So again, the original intent, AJ and Dave, was to work within the confines of the space. And, other than, adding a new vertical circulation core, infilling the atrium, and really just kind of renovating and clean it up for office use and community space. That's what was conceived. Al was part of those meetings. Bill Stableford was part of those meetings. There were lots of discussions about, what wanted to go into this space. But if at the end of the day, somebody says, to your point, AJ, we don't need this back half of the building, we can chop that off, or it doesn't make any sense to have this big gym here. I'm just making this up. It'd be nicer to have a much larger auditorium, right? Like a real auditorium with 350 or 400, seats,
Right.
fly and all that crazy stuff. That's great. We can absolutely support that. It's just not going to be for the $15.9 million. That would be my point.
I think it'd be great to hear from that design committee, but what I'm seeing here is we have a baseline. We have a baseline square footage, cost per square foot, baseline usage of areas so that we could reference back to when any other new designs come up. So we can say, does it fit, does not fit, will that cost more? What scope is changed and how much that's going to cost? If we take 50% of the $105 a square foot space and the town people want it to be $400 a square foot for that usage, well, that's going to be a bit different. We can at least go back and reference that. We have a baseline, so that's very good.
Yep. Thanks for this. I had a couple of specific questions that keep coming up that I guess I'd like to just at the moment, just know the answers for, not without comment. There was some, when I toured the building, there was some talk of not replacing the windows. Was window replacement in or out of
Yes,
that budget?
in.
Window replacement is in.
Yeah,
All of them or some of them?
all of them.
Okay, good.
Now that's what's budgeted. Now, for some reason, we want to maintain some of them and only replace, like the ones in the gymnasium have to go because a lot of them are broken. But we budgeted replacing all of the windows and a whole new roof.
Other questions. A new roof is in there too.
Yes, definitely.
And how about the last part was the certain energy efficiency portions, or not even energy, but things like solar panels on the roof, or upgraded electrical service to put in a generator, so it could be an emergency shelter if that was needed.
Yeah, we did not have an emergency shelter level generator. We do have electrical upgrades. We do have geothermal. We did have a general Connecticut high performance building standard like type, which is almost code at this point. We talked about solar array on the roof. The only issue with that is that it required a structural analysis of the existing roof framing, and nobody wanted to get into doing that analysis. It could still be done, but it definitely would require an analysis, and then there may be structural implications to support not just the weight of and it's honestly, it's not the weight of the panels, but you're creating conditions where snowdrift now would happen, and that load would need to be analyzed by the structural engineer. So we did talk about that, but we decided not to go down that rabbit hole quite yet, but we can now.
But the roof was intended to be replaced.
The roof, yes, whole new roofing membrane, 100%.
A membrane, not the structure. Is that
not the structure? Unless when you peel the roof up, there's rot or there's something that we couldn't see, but a whole new roof.
And that's a tear off, not a new membrane on top. That's you budget for.
Yeah. Take it off, insulation, Joe. The whole, make it what it should be. There's a deep enough parapet up there.
Yeah.
What it doesn't include, and just to be clear, is that they've got that really cool space on the roof. If you've been in the building or been by the building, there's that I don't know what it's called.
The penthouse.
Yeah, the penthouse. But it was like an office or something. We did not include doing anything to that only because it would have required making that handicap accessible, which means an elevator up to that level.
I think we talked about closing that off.
Yeah,
Well, would
other
that
than
be-
cleaning it up, but it wasn't going to become occupiable space.
Was it going to be demolished?
No,
When the new roof was
no.
put in?
Nope, it's just not considered occupiable space.
I think if it's not occupiable, and we're putting a new roof on, I mean, wouldn't it make sense to demolish it?
No, because you can still go up there to access the roof. That's how you would access the roof, actually. It's considered, roof access. It's a really nice roof access, but that's all it would be considered.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So I have one follow-up question. I'll piggyback on Joe. Joe, if you had any more questions, I'll piggyback on one.
Just, that was the extent of it. I'm not sure I agree with leaving it as, leaving it there. It seems as though if we're going to be doing we're going to be doing a new roof, that would be the time to demolish it. That roof access up a narrow pair of stairs, a narrow set of stairs is not, would not be a adequate roof access for any work that would have to be done up there. But I'll leave that for that. As I said, some of these are later discussions.
Sure.
Yeah, you'd have to create roof access somewhere else then, but
Right.
what I wanted to ask is then, just to piggyback on Joe's, I think I know the answer, and I think we discussed for septic. Is there an assumption that the septic system is proper for what we might use the building for and that it's still functioning and adequate? Or was there anything in the budget to evaluate septic or replace that?
We definitely have money in the budget to evaluate it, and we definitely have money in there for something related to the septic, in case it needed to be upgraded or increased. Or I doubt it needed to be increased, because if it was a septic system for an occupied school, we're not. I don't think we're going to be adding any bathrooms or toilet fixtures. It's the same. They're just going to be upgraded, so we should be fine. But we did carry money in there in case there's something that needs to happen with it, to fix it or enhance it or something.
Okay.
Joe, can I add a little observation here? I know as we go down the road, there will be frictions. There's never enough money to do everything that a building committee or community wants. But I think in good conscience, the selectmen did try to establish a realistic price tag for this project. And I think you've heard Mark describe that we did ask Colliers to make provision for everything that we could think of. We've never had a separate design committee before. In all of our previous projects, the building committee has been its own design committee. But we felt with a project like this that the public wanted to be able to feel they had a chance to give voice to what they wanted in the building, and that somebody was really listening. The first meeting of this group, I reminded you that you're the adults in the room. You have got to keep this project within its space budget and within its dollar budget. You are the committee that may have to be saying no a lot when the advisor in your committee says the public wants this, that, and the other thing. I feel that the most value that the advisory committee is going to bring you is how some of these public spaces should be outfitted, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. I don't see the design committee coming back to you saying the building needs to be changed, walls need to be taken out, pools need to be built. That's really not what we envision. What we envision is the public helping the building committee understand how some of these spaces should be fitted out, what the final finishes look like, or what provisions need to be made in those spaces for the pottery wheels or for the artists or for the music people. And so from a selectman's point of view, we think the design committee can be helpful to you by in effect, saving you a lot of time and energy by having them collect the information. You're the folks that are going to have to then weigh the information they bring in. But we believe that that information will be, I don't want to use the word superficial, but minimal. It's going to be what kind of groups want to use these spaces. And these public spaces, we envision, might be used 3 or 4 times a day by different groups with different needs. And so these spaces are not going to be highly specialized. They're going to have to be the opposite of specialized. I think as we get started here, I'd like to think that we are starting with a reasonable budget that you are going to be able to manage within. And it's up to the design committee and the selectmen to help manage the public's expectations as to what can really be done within this building, within the budget that the voters approved. There's a possibility we can apply for grants for specialized needs, which might allow us to enhance this building in certain ways. And if we are able to obtain grants, then we can exceed the existing budget. At the moment, though, I think the selectmen want you to focus on that $15.9 million as a hard figure. If you encounter difficulties, then you and the selectmen will be having joint discussions about what might be done about the unexpected problems that arise. So at this point, I hope you're feeling confident. I hope you're feeling that this is doable and that we've made adequate provisions to get this job done.
Al, after today's discussion, I personally am feeling more comfortable, yes.
Yeah, I've been looking at the budget and some of the things that have been required, and I've been getting more comfortable with the budget as we've gone forward. There's not to say that there could be surprises, but it seems as though everything that we've said, well, could it be this? Could it be that? Do we have to do this? Has been already put into the budget.
The selectmen have found Colliers to be very helpful over the years in anticipating what needs to be built into that budget. And, the prior groups grilled Colliers pretty extensively about, did you include this? Did you allow for that? That doesn't mean that the public's expectations are reasonable, but I think those of us that have worked on buildings in the past have found that these budgets that Colliers has produced have been reasonable and accomplish whatever our original idea of what the programming should be. This is an unusual building we're designing now because the public is going to feel a strong sense of ownership in it. And undoubtedly, we're going to come to a point where, as Mark has pointed out to us, we're going to have to start saying, no, that's not doable within the budget. Those are uncomfortable moments, but and I think they're inevitable. But I think from everything I've heard so far and watching this discussion, it seems like we can get this building done.
Well, we better. We have we haven't signed up for a lifetime membership here on this committee, Al. This is we've got dates that we have to hit. Not only it's not only the dollars, but we have the dates. A delay of if we promise a certain date and we miss by a year, that to me that's even worse than missing the budget. We need to be sure that we deliver on time and on budget.
I'd like to leave one final thought. It is entirely possible that the public will identify things that we can't accommodate right now, but the town may choose to build it into a future funding. It simply might be something we can't do during the time of this initial construction, but we can build it into our budgets for future years and accommodate it when the funds are available. So that's another out we have. Depending on what we learn from the public, is possible. I've often said that how we use this building on day one is probably not how we're going to be using it as a town in year 10 or year 50. This building is going to be continuously evolving and need continuous reinvestment.
Yeah, Al, I apologize. You know, my unloaded question was just the date about the architect, and it grew into this conversation.
This was a very healthy conversation, and I like the chemistry of this group coming together and recognizing that we can get this project done. And Joe, I know you're not going to announce a date to the public until you're darn certain we can make it. I'm looking at Joe Ballantyne, your chairman here.
Yeah, unless you want to make me the sacrificial lamb. I'll announce 2028 and then I'll resign. No, we're gonna, I mean, everything I've heard so far says we're gonna be on time, and we are tracking to be on budget. There are certain surprises that can come, but I think everything we've heard so far was we're tracking to be on budget. Okay.
Is it too early to have a timeline? And like Dave said earlier, you know, we know what our end date is target wise, and all the steps that need to be taken to get there. You know, so Colliers, I'm sure, is working on that. At what point can we see that timeline so we know what our milestones should be?
That'll be very soon, Joe. You know, now that we're in the process of getting engaged and getting things going, we'll start again. We did share during the interview the macro schedule with the major milestone: design, bid, construction, occupy. We'll continue to work off of that as just a guide, but the management will be that milestone schedule I spoke of earlier that has way more detail behind getting to those milestone dates.
Thank you.
When very soon, by the next meeting, which is like in 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mark, what's typical with these committees when you complete your RFP for the architects, or you'll send that out to the group ahead of time for review? Is that typically what you do?
Yeah, what we'll do, Dave, is we'll generate the RFP in draft format. We'll send it out to the committee for review, and then at that meeting, you'll discuss it. You'll come up with suggestions, edits if necessary, and then if none, or with edits, you'll vote to approve the issuance of the RFP, and then from there we'll work with Bill and the town to get it published and get it out. We'll have specific dates in there for pre-proposal briefings, when proposals are due, when we as a committee will review the proposals as they come in. Interview dates will have a tentatively established, and then selection dates.
So are we targeting next meeting to have that draft to us prior?
Yes, I would suggest by the meeting in 2 weeks that we have the draft. Again, we already have 80% of it complete. So we're ready to definitely get that, and we'll issue that in advance of the meeting, so you have time to review it and chew on it before the meeting.
Okay, so that would be your only action item for next meeting, or are you planning on sending us a draft schedule then also?
Yeah, we'll send a draft schedule as well, an overall schedule. We'll put together a milestone schedule that shows the architect selection process with some tentative dates that will need to be confirmed by everybody. This is on top of making the edits to the contract that we spoke of, an hour or so ago.
Okay, great, Mark, that's good.
Yep.
Any other? Well, I don't think we could take any new business. There's, I don't know if Jacqueline's still on, but it doesn't appear as though we have any other public comments. I should ask, is there any other public comment?
There's no one on from the public. You're good.
Okay. The remarks are simple. I want to thank everyone for their their interest in this, and every meeting seems to be a good meeting. I mean, this is a meeting that seems to have moved the ball forward in getting the information that we wanted to be sure we're comfortable going forward with both the timing and the budget and the information that Mark needs to that Mark's putting together that we'll have ready for the next meeting, which is roughly 2 weeks, and we will be able to move, be able to look forward from there. Other than that, thank you everyone for your participation, and I guess I need a motion to.
Can I ask one final question? Just
sure.
a housekeeping thing. From a timing perspective, or should we figure about 2 hours for these meetings? Should we try to budget them in an hour and a half? Like, what do we, as a committee, kind of what are we thinking about commitment ongoing?
It's a good question. I'd like to hear that. I'd like to hear everybody's answer on that.
I think we've been running about 2 hours on average. We're coming up on 2 hours right now.
Yeah. I will vote that my brain usually shuts off around the 90-minute mark. It makes it hard. That last half hour is always hard for me, but
yeah.
So we'll assign everything to AJ after the 90-minute mark, since he's not paying attention.
Exactly.
All the action items will be AJ's after 90 minutes.
yeah.
You'll approve everything after 90 minutes.
Right, exactly.
I would say budget 2 hours. If we can do it in an hour and a half, we do it in an hour and a half. If we're allowed to do that,
It also depends how much we pack the agenda. This agenda was pretty well packed, and being a special meeting, we had to get everything on paper before, or we couldn't talk about it. That's what I've been told. So this we packed this budget pretty well, and it's really, I guess it's our third full meeting, really. So in terms of other than the interviews. So
Hey, Joe, just one really quick question. Sorry. So Mark, at some point, are you taking over the agendas for these meetings, or no?
Is that to me, Dave?
Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
Well, typically we'll work with Joe to set the agenda, but or we'll work with the town to help set the agenda. So, for example, once we know the architect selection process, we'll suggest agenda items to carry. There may be other things that you may want to have on the agenda, but we'll certainly play a big role and help set the agenda.
Yeah, because I think the more we detail it, the more efficient we can probably be going through it in the future.
I can tell you, well, you've already lived through the interview process for the OPMs. That interview process for the architects will take a lot of time, especially if you do it in one day. Reviewing proposals will take a lot of time. I mean, we'll try and get things in advance to you so you can review them prior to the meeting. But, this certainly sounds like a really engaging and active committee, which is great. Lots of conversation, lots of questions. It's nice having people that are from the industry because you get it and you know the questions to ask. So, it feels like, they're going to be at least an hour and a half long. I think once we're in design, again, we'll work with Joe on setting the agenda. Maybe it'll be quicker because we'll be talking about programmatic issues or finishes issues. There's going to be a lot of things that happen during the course of the design phase that won't take a lot of time. There will be other things that will take a lot of time when we start to get estimates or we have to do value engineering. Those meetings tend to take time because there's a lot of detail and a lot of high level stuff, but we'll try and keep that agenda confined to just those meaty topics, so you don't have 5 other things I mean, you always have public comment and those types of things, but we won't talk about the estimates and some of the details and then like 4 other technical items. We'll try and tailor them so that, we're not going past AJ's brain power limit.
If the meetings start becoming overly long, one of the things we can do is we can schedule a meeting in between the 2 meetings that we have. So we're not stuck to the every other, twice a month. If there are things that have to be determined, have to be decided, rather than taking one meeting to try to get in, 3 hours worth, we can break up them and add additional meetings as we go forward too. So that'll help you, AJ. You can.
I hope I'm not the only one that feels
instead
that
of a
way.
3-hour
but,
meeting.
I hope I'm not the only one that feels that way, but
No, you're not.
No, you know.
Especially, but the good news is we started at 5:30. If we started at 7:30, this would be 9:30. Then,
Yeah.
then I think all of us would be snoozing. Joe, you're closing your eyes already. I can see it.
I'm still in the office. I haven't left yet.
Any other questions before I ask for a motion to close here? Motion to close?
Motion.
Okay. Hearing no objections, meeting closed. And thank you, everyone. It's been a
Have a good evening, all.
Have a
Cheers.
good night, everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Nice seeing you all.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you.